Hello to all of our friends in Australia, and welcome to my office. And also welcome to the Christian Educational Services Australia Conference. They've asked me to say a few words today and leading into this conference on God and kids. I thought it was a little odd, actually, in a way, a funny title, because it sounds like there's something exceptional or unusual about God and kids. But actually, there's nothing more natural than God and kids. More natural, in fact, perhaps, than God and man, because if there's one thing in the Bible that's clear, it is that God loves children. Now, there's a curious little analogy in the Old Testament that I want to draw for you that I think has some relevance to the situation that we're in the church today. You're familiar with the story. Israel had left Egypt, they'd gone to Sinai, they had the law, and the time had come for them to send in spies to spy out the land, make their plans as to how they were going to take the land. And so they sent all these men in from the different tribes to scout the place out. Well, they came back, and the majority of them, all but two, brought an evil report of the land. Oh, the land was rich. The land flowed with milk and honey. There were grapes so huge that you had to carry a cluster of them on a bar between two men. But the problem was there were giants in the land, and they were scared, and they did not think that they could actually take the land, so they were ready to go back into Egypt. Two men said, no, we're able to go in, we're able to do this. They were Joshua and Caleb, but the people were still afraid. God accepted this finally and said, fine, you're not going to go into the land. You're probably familiar with this too. You remember he said, of all of you people here, those who are 20 years old and up, not one of you is going to enter the land except Joshua and Caleb. The reason is because the rest of you have simply refused. You lacked faith. And there's something interesting about this, because it seems like the older we get and we become into adulthood, the harder it is to believe. And here we are oftentimes willing to sacrifice those years of our children when it's easier for them to believe. We fail perhaps to teach them the things about God that we really ought to. But the lesson from this is interesting, because the lesson is this, that it was only those 19 years and under, the next generation, that was going to be allowed to enter into the land. And I thought about that a lot. And I've wondered, in a way, if the next best hope for unity in the Church of God lies with the next generation. I don't know if we have that much time or not, but I'm instructed in the Scriptures that I'm not supposed to stop work on the presumption that we only have a little bit of time left. I think all of us know that we're supposed to work this thing out right to the end. So I can say a couple of things about this. I can say that it's not inconsistent with God's character and with His methods that He should leave the church out here in the wilderness and wait for the next generation of the church to come along and bring the church back together again. He could do something like that. And second, if that is the case, then I think it poses a huge burden on all of us as to the work we need to do with our children right here and right now. Either way, we have a profound responsibility, and it's a responsibility that I don't think we have handled very well in years gone by. It's for this reason that Christian Educational Ministries has made a commitment to producing quality educational material for parents to use at home and to teach children at the church. Now, you may not know this, but many years ago, in the 40s, the Worldwide Church of God had a Sabbath school program. Actually, it wasn't the Worldwide Church of God. It was the Radio Church of God in those days, and they had a Sabbath school program. And one of the leading elders came to Herbert Armstrong and said, well, there's no such thing in the Bible as Sabbath school. Parents should teach their children the Bible at home, and when they come to church, the children should be with their parents in church. And that point of view prevailed, and he persuaded Herbert Armstrong to do away with Sabbath schools, which they did. And for a long time thereafter, there was nothing for children in the church, except coming to church and what their parents did at home. And the irony of the thing is that during those years, the church did nothing to provide the parents with educational materials. They did nothing to teach the parents how to teach their children at home. If indeed that were the obligation, that parents taught the children at home, we really should have been doing something about that. But it didn't happen. Well, I think when we understand this combination, that it becomes our responsibility to produce not only Sabbath school materials, but materials that parents can use at home. Now, it's not clear to me in the Worldwide Church of God years why this had to be an either-or proposition. In other words, why did it have to be either in church or at home? Why couldn't it be in both places? Why couldn't parents teach their children at home and there be a joint or cooperative or helpful program that joined up with it at church and coordinated with it that brought the child along in church just like they were coming along in the home? And why, for example, couldn't parents prepare their children for Sabbath school so that when they came to church and sat before a teacher who was skilled and prepared, that they would learn more, they would go further and get a lot more out of it? Well, this is the idea behind the Christian Educational Ministries YEA program. YEA stands for Youth Educational Adventures. And the presumption of these is not only that the teacher would do quite a little bit of preparatory to coming to class. I mean, quite a lot of preparation, not something he just throws together on Friday night or Saturday morning. But also that the students would be prepared, that they would each have their own quarterly, that they would each take that quarterly home, that they would come to church having read their lesson before they got there. And out of this and out of the activities and the hands-on learning that children would do, we would come a lot further toward our faith becoming the faith of our children. Someone once suggested that the objective of the YEA program would be to teach our children about their parents' religion, their parents' faith. Our answer was no. This should not be their parents' faith. We want it to be their faith. And we know that children are quite competent, quite able to have faith in God. I think it's fair to say that the program we envision is more demanding than what a lot of people might be prepared to do. But the next question is, with what we have at stake here, can we afford to do less than this? Now, I know that many people do not necessarily believe their children are called now. You know, what if my children aren't called at this particular time? I've heard this many times. But I have to ask you, what's the blessing of little children about in church? When we bring the children in and the minister lays hands on them and prays upon them the blessing of Jesus Christ. And what was Paul talking about in 1 Corinthians 7 when he talked about how that a believing wife should not leave her unbelieving husband, because as long as there is a believer in the family, the children are holy. But if she leaves and the kids stay with her husband, they're not holy. To be holy means to be set apart for God. And there seems to me to be an implication that our children in the church are set apart for God. Why on earth would God not call our children? And my question is, should we, if we can hope for it and believe in it, should we not work for it? Should we not plan? Should we not prepare? Should we not publish? Should we not do what we really need to do? Now, I know there are a lot of programs that people are working on in churches across the country where people are writing lessons and sharing lessons and so forth. And I think that's terrific. As far as I know right now, Christian Educational Ministries is the only group in our tradition that is seriously doing a mass publication of documents and of materials like this. Our problem is we need more help. We need more teachers. We need more editors. We need more artists. We need people to help us produce this thing. Money is not a giant problem because the people who are doing this are not employees. They're all volunteers. Money is not a giant problem because the printing postage combination of this is all covered in the very modest charge we have for our materials. It just seems to me that if we could all get our act together, that there is a great deal we could do for our church, for the children of our church, and for the next generation of the church, if there's going to be one. It's encouraging to me that in these days, when the church is in such turmoil, that all you people have been willing to come here and to talk about this subject and maybe make your contribution toward doing something as a church about our kids. God bless you, and God bless all the efforts that you put forward on behalf of His kids.